Hey everybody, it's Jo Beckwith and welcome back to Trauma Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. I got a message this week about the Parkland shooting and asking about the trauma of that and if I could speak on that from someone who was also involved in incredible nonprofit work. And I didn't know if I could add anything because I have not personally been a victim of gun violence of any form. But then last night I was watching an interview with two of the boys who were survivors of the shooting. And something dawned on me that I wanted to add. Let me start by saying I am not speaking for anyone who has gone through this horrific incident or anyone, but a comment that has been said over and over again in the media is, wow, they all are, doing such amazing things, and they are. And they speak so eloquently, and they do. I mean, it really is so impressive. No matter what side of the political fence you are, what they are doing and standing up for, after all they've gone through is incredible. But the comment that people keep saying is, wow, they look so normal. They've overcome what they've gone through, and they look so normal. To the point where people are accusing them of being actors, like they didn't actually go through the trauma, which is just disgusting, and internet trolls being internet trolls, and we're just gonna ignore them because that's so dumb. But I want to touch on that comment in particular. In society, we seem to have this idea that if someone looks okay, they probably are okay, and I think inherently we know that's not true, but we tend to act like it is, and we tend to speak like it is. What I mean by that is making statements instead of asking questions. An example of this in my own life was a couple months ago. Doctors are people who are trained to know at least something about mental health. And yet, about a year ago I went to see a doctor at a time where I was really not okay mentally. Very dark place. She was very aware of that, dealt with it really well. I appreciated that. A couple months later, I went back to see her for a checkup. I was still really not okay. And she walked in the room. Now, I was dressed for work at that point, where previously I was just dressed for home. I was like in sweatpants and a hoodie. And when she walked in the room the second time, where I was dressed for work, like my hair was done, my makeup was on, and she goes, "Wow, you look like you're doing so much better. I am so glad to see that. Great job. What can I do for you today?" So she walks in the room and essentially states how I am doing, only then asks what additionally she can do for me. It's like she answered the question of how my mental health was doing before she even asked the question. I have done this. I have done this so many times. I am so guilty of it, assuming how people are doing based on how they appear, how they talk, how they act, how they're dressing, what they're doing. They got out of bed and they fill in the blank. And so they must be, feeling better. They look normal, so they must be feeling normal. That's just not true, though, and I've experienced that so much in my own life. I think logically we can connect the gaps here, but the fact of the matter is, if someone has gone through horrific trauma, they can still get out of bed sometimes. The children who have, and adults, but the children especially, who we're seeing in the media, who have gone through this horrific shooting, are getting in front of news cameras and standing up for what they believe in and speaking. And so they look like they've overcome it. They look like they have not let trauma affect them. They look like they're doing great. They look like they're fine. And so I think we assume that people like them are fine. Now, I'm not talking about them specifically because I don't know them. I obviously have no idea how they're doing personally, but we do this a lot in interpersonal lives. If you know someone who has gone through something traumatic or who is dealing with any kind of mental health issue or mental illness, I can't encourage you enough to ask questions instead of making assumptions or making statements. The biggest reason for that is, A, it's dangerous when you make statements and assumptions, and B, it really shuts people down. Now, when someone has gone through trauma, a lot of the times it takes someone's voice away. It takes pieces of ourselves away, at least for a little while. It's hard to put things into words. It's hard to put emotions into words. And sometimes it takes a little while. So assuming how someone's doing or making a statement of you look great, you look fine, you seem like you're doing wonderfully, is setting someone up to have a hard time then answering the question of how are you if you happen to ask it after the fact. And asking the question, how are you doing really, is so important. It's a hard question to ask. We ask, hey, how's it going, all the time to, strangers in supermarkets. But how are you doing really? Like looking someone in the eyes and going, yeah, I know what you've been going through. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How's counseling going? Or how are you adjusting to the new medication? Or whatever it is. Sincerely inquiring and opening that conversation is so powerful, is so empowering, and is so important. I cannot tell you how much that helps people. I've had people in my life who knew me well enough to call me out when I was acting normal and was not okay, and those people were lifesavers. I mean, sincerely, saved my life. Because us, as people who have gone through trauma or dealing with mental illness or fill in the blank, can often convince ourselves that we're normal or really forcing it when we are not, when we're falling apart, when we need someone to look us in the eyes and say, hey, are you really okay? That can really break a cycle of numbing or avoiding or whatever it is. And I cannot tell you how often I tried to give the appearance of being normal, of being fine, of everything's okay. Part of it was self-defense, but a huge part of it was trying to avoid reality, was trying to avoid dealing with what was really going on. And having people who could ask real questions was priceless. And on the self-defense side of things, and what I mean by that is, trying to act like everything was okay, so that maybe people who I didn't trust, people who weren't safe people, didn't know what was really going on. I mean, that's perfectly fine to do, obviously. But I think that's where we as a society start assuming that people are fine because they look fine. That's just not true. It is so easy to put on a mask, as I think every living human knows. It's really hard to take off that mask. And I would encourage you to be a person in the lives of the people around you that people can take off their masks around. Be someone who can listen and ask questions instead of assuming and making statements. It's not easy to do, and it takes practice, and I'm still working on that too. Even as someone who knows how important it is, sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to slow down and ask questions and listen, but it's so important. And when I've been on the receiving end of it, it is invaluable. I cannot state how important it has been to have people who weren't fooled by my appearance of being normal. So if you know people who are struggling or who have gone through things, I would just encourage you not to assume things, and to ask questions, and to be there in whatever capacity you feel like you can be there. Because that's how we're all here for each other, and that's how we support each other and make this place a better place. Chelsea, thank you so much for sending me that message earlier this week. I truly appreciate it, and all the work that you are doing in your nonprofit. I am Jo Beckwith, and this is Trauma Talk. I often talk on subjects regarding trauma and mental illness and mental health as someone who's experienced all of the above and dealt with all of the above. I like opening up the conversation and trying to be real about what living through these things is like. And I would love your input on what I said today and what I said on any other video. So leave a comment, let me know what you think, and make sure you hit subscribe if you are interested in hearing videos like this in the future. Thanks guys, you are amazing. I truly appreciate your support, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Bye.